This episode of Let's Talk Natural Medicine is brought to you by BioGland MedLab, proud platinum partners of ATMS. Built on 50 plus years of healthcare experience and nutritional science, BioGland MedLab delivers practitioner-only formulas, trusted by practitioners, loved by families. Welcome back to Let's Talk Natural Medicine, brought to you by the Australian Traditional Medicine Society. I'm your host, Natalie Hume, and today we're exploring natural ways to support the management of diabetes. Here's a startling fact. Over 400 million people worldwide have diabetes, and unfortunately the number continues to rise. While diabetes can be challenging to manage, natural approaches can complement conventional treatment by supporting blood sugar balance and overall wellness. And joining us today to discuss these solutions is Carrun Squires, a diabetes educator, naturopath, and nutritionist. Carrun, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here talking about such a massive topic, and it seems to be growing, this diabetes, unfortunately. So let's start by giving us an overall overview of diabetes and explaining why the number of people with diabetes continue to grow.
Absolutely. In fact, the numbers that you just gave before are actually higher than that. In 2021, for example, the International Diabetes Federation put out some estimates, and at that stage it was 537 million people with type 2 diabetes, which at that stage was more than 10% of the global population. And it's estimated by 2030, so just 5 years away, that it's going to be as high as 643 million. And that's diagnosed cases. So we know for every diagnosed case that there's often an undiagnosed case as well. So the numbers are incredibly high. So type 2 diabetes, type 2 diabetes is a condition where the body struggles to regulate its blood glucose levels. And glucose is our main source of fuel. So in type 2 diabetes, which makes up about 90 to 95% of all cases, the problem isn't that the body can't make insulin like in type 1 diabetes. It's that our cells stop responding to it properly. And this is called insulin resistance, which drives type 2 diabetes. The reason we're seeing the numbers of type 2 diabetes climbing globally is a mix of lifestyle, environment, and modern living, a much more sedentary lifestyle, and more highly processed foods are being consumed, less movement, higher stress, less sleep, an aging population. So there's quite a combination of things that are causing the rise that we're seeing. But we're even seeing type 2 diabetes in quite young people now, which tells us it's not just about age and genetics.
Yeah, that's scary. Wow, it's just such a huge issue for us. And let's maybe discuss, why did you get into diabetes management in the first place? And how have you seen that natural approaches impact your patients with diabetes?
Well, when I first started in clinical practice, I was happy to see anyone who came through the doors, from skin issues, gut issues, hormonal issues, fatigue. However, I started to notice that it was when I had clients that presented with metabolic issues like blood glucose starting to creep higher, those cases really fired me up, and I realised a lot of their symptoms were related to blood glucose dysregulation. So that's where I decided I really wanted to focus my practice. I've worked with a lot of clients in clinic who thought more medication was their only option, but with simple targeted adjustments in like balancing meals with fibre, protein, healthy fats, moving more, supporting gut health, I've seen people lower their HbA1c and their fasting blood glucose by making some of these simple changes. And they've been able, in some cases, to reduce their medications and just feel more in control again. Type 2 diabetes is highly responsive. It's really, really responsive to diet and lifestyle change.
Now, you mentioned two blood tests there, HbA1c and fasting glucose. So if someone's going, oh gosh, I haven't been to the doctor for years, I haven't had a blood test for years, I have no idea what my blood sugars or levels are doing, what my cholesterols may be doing, what would you suggest to go talk to their healthcare provider, and what tests should they be looking at?
I really encourage people to have not just a fasting blood glucose, but to also have a fasting insulin test with that. So that's different to a glucose tolerance test. It's just fasting insulin and fasting blood sugar, because what I've seen in clinic is some people will present back with a normal blood glucose level, but then when we get their insulin, their fasting insulin checked as well, we can see that the insulin is off the scale, trying to hold the blood glucose in check. And that can be quite a challenge for people who may need to reduce their weight if they have high insulin levels. Insulin is a pro-fat storage hormone, so they can find themselves in a bit of a vicious cycle there. So fasting blood glucose, insulin. I really like people to get their vitamin D checked as well. A lot of people think of vitamin D just for immune support and bone health, but pancreatic beta cells that produce the insulin all have vitamin D receptors. So I like to see that their vitamin D is nice and high as well. And just their general bloods, just the usual biochem, hematology, iron studies, those general ones, but certainly fasting blood glucose, fasting insulin, and vitamin D.
Amazing. That's a good list. Now, you've been talking so much about lifestyle that's really connected to type 2 diabetes. So, can we expand on a bit more of those common lifestyle changes that can help manage diabetes? What would some of the top recommendations be?
Some of the top tips would be to base meals on real whole foods. So as often as you can, focus on foods that are close to nature as possible. So the close to nature as possible foods means that you're consuming much less in the way of processed foods, which is where a lot of the problem is. So combining protein, healthy fats, and high fiber veggies or legumes, this can help slow glucose release into the body. Another tip is what I call swapping. Another tip is what I call swapping fast carbs for slow carbs. So whole grains, fruit and legumes, things that contain fiber, foods that contain fiber, instead of white bread, sweets, and soft drinks. Another tip is to move regularly, especially after meals if you can. Even a 10-minute walk helps our muscles use up the glucose from the meal that you've just eaten. But moving your body every day in a way that you enjoy, because you're more likely to you're more likely to continue doing it if you enjoy it, right? So just moving your body every day is beneficial. Another top tip would be to support your gut health. And once again, that comes back to natural foods and fiber-containing foods. Also, fermented foods and prebiotic-rich veggies can improve insulin sensitivity, but it's the fibers that I really like my clients to concentrate on, because these fibers in the plant food, they feed specific gut bacteria that produce various short chain fatty acids that help maintain glucose control. So that's why the fiber is really important. And the next tip that a lot of people don't really consider is to prioritize rest. Sleep quality directly impacts our blood glucose control. When you sleep, there's a natural gentle rise and fall of blood glucose levels based on your circadian rhythm. So this cycle ensures that there's proper regulation of certain hormones that are related to metabolic health, like insulin, others like cortisol, also the satiety hormones. So getting a good, healthy sleep is really important for blood glucose control. So that's probably my top 5 tips.
And now you talked a little bit about stress as well. I just want to, obviously, that's really important to get that healthy sleep. When someone's stressed, we've got that hormone cortisol that's obviously released, and we know that a lot of people are in that whole chronic stress cycle, fatigue, burnout. So can you just maybe give us a little bit of a link between how our cortisol is affecting our insulin as well?
Absolutely. So hormones like cortisol and insulin need to play really nicely together. When we have high cortisol and oftentimes high adrenaline, this affects the body's production of insulin and also the efficient usage of it as well. And these flight or fight, these stress hormones also encourage the body to release free fatty acids and glucose into the bloodstream. So this can actually start to contribute to higher blood glucose levels and cardiovascular disease that we see that with the release of those free fatty acids. And we often see cardiovascular disease as a consequence of type 2 diabetes. So sometimes the information or the not information, sometimes the advice I'll give to my clients really is not to step up the exercise harder. For example, if they need to lose weight, but to perhaps look at what they're doing as a balance in their lifestyle and how they're managing stress to reduce those cortisol levels, because cortisol also is a pro-fat storage hormone as well. So working out harder and really, I mean, that can raise your stress levels as well. So sometimes it's more about finding that balance.
I like that tip. I always heard that going for a walk after you eat a meal is so good for your blood sugar levels and regulation. So I do love that tip, and that's hopefully one is only as simple as 10 minutes potentially can actually have a big difference with that as well.
Absolutely. They've done studies to show that as little as 10 minutes can make a huge impact on the glucose load of that meal. And really, taking a walk after dinner, for example, is something that's done in so many different countries around the world. In Italy and Spain and those Mediterranean countries, they often go for a promenade or a walk after dinner, a stroll after dinner. It doesn't have to be hard exercise. Just a gentle walk using those big muscles of our legs actually helps encourage that glucose uptake into the cells.
Amazing. We should all be doing more of that. And I just want to
We
touch on the
should.
food. Yeah, I know as well. I just want to touch on the food. Now, you talked about the whole fiber and things. I was wondering if you can just give us, before I go into some nutrients and herbs, what are some great foods that people can be including? You talked about protein, you talked about fat. I think obviously a lot of people can be skipping meals at breakfast or starting the day with a cup of coffee before they have breakfast. What are some really good foods that they can bring in to help to balance out their blood sugar levels for the day?
I always go for veggies first. So I'm a huge vegetable fan, and there is just so much nutrition, nutrients, fiber contained in all the vegetables. So definitely go there first. Some people might have a little bit of issue with the more starchy vegetables like potatoes and peas, things like that. So stick to more of the lower glycemic index veggies like your broccolis and cabbage and any of those other veggies. Proteins, really healthy proteins can include eggs, lean meats, fish. So a nice palm portion of protein per meal is really helpful, helps slow down glucose absorption in the body as well. And healthy fats like your olive oil, your fish oils. So eating fish, well, that's part of the protein as well. But if you're eating the fatty fish, you're getting the good the healthy anti-inflammatory fats into the diet as well.
Amazing. Excellent. And then I know there's so many beautiful nutrients and herbs that could help with diabetes or managing blood glucose and balancing out our blood sugar levels. Can you share some of those with us as well?
I can. I've actually made a list of a few to mention. So truly food as medicine, like the food we eat is one of our most powerful allies that we can use in the fight against chronic disease like type 2 diabetes. So it can really be a game changer. And what better way to look after your health than eating something tasty and healthy for you? So, for example, even some of our culinary herbs and spices can have a good effect on blood sugar regulation. They're a huge powerhouse of nutrition. So adding cinnamon to your yogurt or on fruit can improve insulin sensitivity, and it can help reduce post-meal blood glucose spikes. Fenugreek seeds, they're rich in fibre and they can help slow carb absorption. One that most people are really familiar with is turmeric. It is highly anti-inflammatory and antioxidant, and it can help reduce the systemic inflammation that we often see in type 2 diabetes. And one that's become a little bit more accessible that I love is nigella seeds, which you can throw into lots of different meals. Nigella improves insulin sensitivity. It increases glucose uptake into the cells. And in fact, as a herb, so kind of going off on a tangent a little bit, as a herb, it has actually been shown to be comparable to standard diabetes medication like metformin when it's taken at the right dose. So just as an example of how powerful nigella is. Another food that most people aren't really familiar with and haven't tried, but once again, I like to mention it as an example of how powerful food can be, and that's bitter melon. We use that as a herb as well, but as a food, it is really, really bitter, and not many people like it, but it can be used in curries and stir fries, and it contains compounds that stimulate insulin secretion, and it's that bitterness in that food that acts like a GLP-1 agonist in the gut, and that helps reduce glucose absorption. And just a few others, magnesium is a really common deficiency that I see in clinic, but you can find it in leafy greens, nuts, seeds, legumes. It helps support insulin action, healthy sleep, energy levels, which are all important. Chromium is another mineral that we see a deficiency in type 2 diabetes, but it's readily available in green beans and whole foods and broccoli. Green tea, many people would be familiar with that, and that's been shown to help with healthy weight management, and it's a highly antioxidant. And just generally, once again, going back to the veggies and the high fibre foods like lentils, chickpeas, veggies. In fact, with those things that I've just mentioned, you could pretty much throw most of those into a stir fry and enjoy it with a lovely green tea. And that's truly an example of food as medicine.
I love it. I have a green tea every day, and I always include cinnamon in my full Greek, that full fat Greek yogurt, get that protein in. So there's some great tips. Thank you for sharing those.
I love cinnamon in Greek yogurt as well. And I'm glad you said full fat too.
Yes.
Because it's the fat, that healthy fat that really helps slow that glucose absorption. So yes, cinnamon's a great one. And it tastes almost like a treat. It doesn't, it's not a hardship to be having cinnamon.
No, definitely not. So I'm going to do a little bit of a fact and fiction segment now. I'm going to share a common belief about diabetes, and can you let us know if this is fact or fiction? So people with diabetes should completely avoid carbohydrates.
Fiction. Definitely fiction. Carbs are not the enemy. It's the type of carbohydrate and the quality of the carbohydrate that matters. So our bodies need glucose for energy. We're going to get that energy from carbohydrate foods. The real issue is with the highly processed carbs that cause the sharp blood sugar spikes, like white bread, biscuits, pastries, lollies, soft drinks, all those obvious sweet foods. But choosing what I call slow carbs, such as vegetables, fruit, legumes, and pairing them with the fat and the protein that we mentioned before, helps release energy more steadily. So there's still carbohydrates, but they're not the ones that are going to drastically raise blood glucose levels and cause lots of those spikes that end up causing fatigue in a lot of people too. So it's not about no carbs, it's about smart carbs.
I like that, smart carbs. And
Smart
so
carbs.
for our listeners who might be newly diagnosed with diabetes or maybe looking for support and more education, what are the first steps you recommend to really incorporate natural strategies into their wellness care?
Definitely have a look at diet. Have a look at your diet first. Get the help of a nutritionist on board if that's going to make it easier. It can be very confusing with a lot of the diet and food information that's out there. So get a nutritionist on board. Have a really good look at your diet. And as I said before, increase the vegetables and the good protein and the healthy fats. I like to tell my clients to cram in so much of the good stuff that it naturally crowds out a lot of the stuff that we shouldn't be eating. Move in ways that you enjoy. So start to look at the diet and lifestyle things that are going to help keep blood glucose levels more stable. Also, build a health team is also what I say to my clients, because you can combine medical care with naturopathic care. That way you have a full toolbox at your disposal of information. So you don't have to choose one or the other. I tell my clients that we can all work together, and your team should, if you've been newly diagnosed, your team should consist of your GP, hopefully a diabetes educator, your naturopath, should you wish to work with one, nutritionist, but also a podiatrist and an optometrist to keep an eye on the complications from having type 2 diabetes as well. So often peripheral neuropathy, so that's why it's important to see a podiatrist, or retinopathy, so blindness, and that's important to see an optometrist. So have a team around you to help support you. Also, don't underestimate the effect that a diagnosis might have on you. It's still considered a chronic disease, and that comes with a lot of fear and uncertainty. So really having some emotional support and supporting that nervous system, I think, is one thing that often gets missed. So people can feel very isolated and very alone with the diagnosis of type 2 diabetes. So really factoring in supporting your stress and getting some healthy sleep as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Carrun, for sharing your expertise, practical advice on helping to manage diabetes naturally. It's been wonderful having you on the episode today.
Thank you very much, Natalie. It's been wonderful to be here, and I hope your listeners have found some tips that they can take away and start to implement into their lifestyle straight away.
Absolutely. And thank you to our listeners for joining us on this episode of Let's Talk Natural Medicine. To find a qualified practitioner, naturopath, nutritionist, or natural medicine practitioner, please visit atms.com.au and click on Find a Practitioner. While you're there, please be sure to sign up to our Friends of Natural Medicine newsletter, where we get to share more healthy tips, yummy healthy recipes, and natural resources for wellness as well. So let's wrap up with some quick wins for diabetes support. I just think, Carrun, from what Carrun's been saying, is being food, going back to real food, whole food, fiber, full fat, healthy fats, and your protein. So making sure you're including all your vegetables as well. Stay active. Start with that 10 minutes of movement, walking after a meal, and prioritize sleep and stress management. Until next time, take care and stay naturally well. Join us again by following us for more uplifting discussions on natural medicine and holistic wellbeing. And if today left you inspired, share the love with a 5-star review. It helps others on their wellness journey find us too.